Later today, Liz Truss will face her first Prime Minister's questions after declaring Britain can ride out the storm.
During her campaign, she dismissed what she called handouts, but she is looking at options to freeze household energy bills as part of a massive cost of living rescue package. We're joined now by David Lammy, who worked opposite Liz Truss as shadow Foreign Secretary before she became Prime Minister. David Lammy, good to see you this morning. She has what she calls a bold plan, and bold plans usually require funding. But I think a number of people, and I wonder if you share this alarm, were concerned when her first priority that she laid out yesterday on the steps of Downing Street was to cut taxes.
Well, look, I think that's an extraordinary thing that she's maintained throughout what was a very right-wing campaign where she appealed to the sort of far ends of the Conservative Party. And in the end, what, tax cuts mean is a lot of money, 30 billion quid blown, very little prospect of growth as a consequence. And of course, you know that for working people, they don't benefit from those tax cuts like those that are wealthy. So that's the curious thing to do when your country's facing a recession and is in a very high inflationary period. It could be damaging to the British economy in the medium term.
And you would imagine that your leader, Sir Keir Starmer, would go big on that, so to speak, at Prime Minister's questions today. The trouble is that the first tax cut that she's going to announce is likely to be the national insurance rise. But that's Labour policy to cut that tax.
Look, we welcome U-turns by the Conservatives, so we'll welcome that. And indeed, she says she's going to
But hang on a moment, you just criticised her for making a tax cut, and that first tax cut is something that you agree with.
Look, we'll be firm where she's saying she wants to reduce income tax, because I don't think that that's clear, and no economists think that's a sensible thing to do. But clearly there are things that we've been calling for months. We called for a windfall tax back in January. It took them 5 months to get there. It looks like she's going to mirror our policy to freeze bills. What we're not clear of is where the money's going to come from. It looks like she might be planning to actually get the consumer to pay by stacking costs down the line on those bills, and of course we would oppose that.
Well,
so
Mr. Lammy, let's just explore this a little further. We are inundated this morning with people who have had terrible experiences within the NHS. I am not for a moment criticising one single member of our wonderful nursing, doctors, paramedics, staff. But the system is broken, and the whole point of the increase in national insurance is that it is a tax that goes towards the NHS and social care. Now, Labour did not want that to be increased, but that money was going to go towards fixing our social care system and help the NHS. Liz Truss is doing exactly what you proposed. She is cutting that increase. How do we pay, then, for fixing the NHS?
Well, look, let's just step back. This is 12 years that the Conservatives have been in power. We are in a high-tax, low-growth economy over those 12 years, and let's remember we had austerity before then. So the NHS is in an absolute state right across the board. Waiting lists have gone up. A&E waits have gone up. You can't see a GP. And of course that needs funding and that needs addressing. We didn't think that national insurance was the right way to do that. We disagree with the government about what they say is their hypothecation for social services and health. We don't recognise that, and no one can see the money coming in. And by the way, in the campaign they've just had,
it's certainly not going to come in if she follows your policy of cutting that tax rise. Where does the money come from?
Health did not come up. You need investment in the British economy.
From where?
What triggers growth is investment in skills and innovation and science. That grows the economy. It makes the pot bigger, particularly in the tough period that we are in. We should have been fixing the roof while the sun was shining. We should have been investing in renewables. We should have not have been getting rid of our gas storage. All of that would have reduced bills at this point in time. We haven't been in power for 12 years. We've not been able to do that, but we've been making that case over this period.
It's an odd situation for you to find yourselves in, and I just wonder whether it rather withdraws an attack line for Sir Keir Starmer. When that tax rise was introduced, the government said it was a necessary permanent source of funding to support the NHS and fix the social care system, and the Labour Party called it unfair and a terribly timed tax rise. Now Liz Truss has done exactly what Labour said. I'm not sure what's going to happen at Prime Minister's questions today.
Susanna, I would say that politics is a dynamic business. What we've got are the Conservatives seeking to adopt our policy because we've been on the pulse of the country and they have not. But we will get into the detail as she actually lays out those plans in detail because they're very sketchy at this point in time. But when she says she wants an aspiration Britain, how do you aspire when we're losing teachers in our country, when you've cut funding to schools? When she says she wants an aspiration Britain, how do you do that when antisocial behaviour is rising and no one's being prosecuted and there's a backlog in our courts? How do you get an aspiration Britain if you're not investing in science and innovation? And how do you do that if you're not helping working people, but you're helping the wealthiest with unfunded tax cuts? That's the detail. That's the scrutiny that we'll be getting into. And I'm sure that Keir Starmer relishes meeting Liz Truss at the Dispatch Box later on.
But the odd thing, Mr Lammy, is that the National Insurance tax cut you've advocated and that Liz Truss is now going to support you on and do would give £7 a year to the poorest 10% of people in the country and £1,800 a year to the richest 10% of the country. She called that fair at the weekend. You seem to be calling that Labour policy.
Ed, it's a long time since you've called me Mr Lammy, by the way.
Why? What does he normally call you?
David! But
I was being polite.
Ed, you know more than anyone that we've got to see the detail of the whole package, not just focus on one aspect of that package. And we really haven't seen that. And we're some way off the emergency budget that I think we're going to need as well.
Can I ask you one other question,
Mr. budget, we'll also get a statement from the OBR.
David, Mr Lammy, David, can I ask you one more question? You said during the campaign that you've had cordial relationships with Liz Truss. You have a professional, constructive working relationship. The Financial Times are reporting today that she's not planning immediately to trigger Article 16 on Northern Ireland, but to try to get concessions from the European Union. Do you think that is a sign that she is seeking to have a similar, more positive, constructive relationship with the European Union? And if she does, will you support her in that?
Well, look, let me say that I did have cordial relations with Liz Truss. We were able to communicate privately very well indeed, and I sent her a message wishing her best wishes in her new role. She has had this fractious attitude towards the European Union, and we disagree with her on the legislation that they're seeking to get through Parliament on the protocol. I've just read the readout, actually, from Joe Biden in their conversation, which is different to the readout from number 10. In that, it's clear that the Americans are pushing very hard for a negotiated settlement. Well, that's Labour policy. We think we can negotiate our way through the problems that exist on trade in Northern Ireland. We don't think you need this legislation, and you certainly don't need to get into litigation with the European Union. Let me say what it means is a trade war, and that's precisely what the British economy doesn't need
So
at
if
this
she
point in
picks a
time.
fight with the European Union, you will back the deal and back the European Union's position and say to Liz Truss she's got this wrong?
I hope that we can have a negotiated settlement with the European Union, roll your sleeves up, get on with the discussions, fix the problems. No one believes, and there are many within the Conservative Party who don't believe, that this legislation is the way to move forward.
Mr. Lammy, David, thank you for coming on our show this morning.
Thank you.
Good to see you again.